Okay, so we're going to be replacing the TCM on this mechatronic unit. We have our tuned unlocked TCM here, mech that we're going to be swapping this TCM onto. So let's start with that. We're going to need T20 in order to get the contact plate off the back here, the interconnect between the solenoids on the back of the mechatronics unit. Yes, it is T20. So there's a particular order you should follow. It's technical service bulletin that outlines the screws. There are 12 of them. I'm just going to crack them all loose here. Okay, so that is all of our screws cracked loose from this contact plate. So from here, I'm just going to remove them. And then once you have the screws out here, just very gently start pulling up at some of the contact points here. It should eventually lift off. Okay. And be careful putting uneven amounts of pressure on this. You do have a lot of very fragile pins inside here at various points that you want to be mindful of. And just keep it in an orientation that'll be clear to you when you come back to it. And put it face down, just as I took it off here. So now you're going to have a ton of contact points on this side going into each of the solenoids. You want to be very, very, very careful that you're not bending these. They will need to slot perfectly back into place once you sandwich this back together. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and flip this over very carefully. So, all right, now we are looking at the TCM side. There's a couple things holding this on. There's 4 bolts, 2 down here, 2 up here. If I recall correctly, 2 of them are longer than the others. I forget which side is which. We'll see here in just a second. You also have essentially a glorified ribbon cable down here. This connector going from your TCM down to the backing plate here. This is kind of fastened in place. You're not going to be able to lift this up. There's some fingers that straddle this mid plate here that this will actually need to be pulled out and then up. So we'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to prepare what look like T30 driver bits. These bolts are labeled as A, B, C, D. I'm going to go ahead and just follow that in reverse order. So I'll go D, C, B, A. I'll do that. Crack the first one loose. These top ones are going to give a little resistance as you're backing them out. They're actually tensioning this bracket here, so it will be you won't be able to hand loosen them until you've backed them out a fair bit. So I'm just loosening that for now to kind of crack that main friction there. Pop this guy out here. These 2 will be easy to back out by hand once you've cracked them loose. Come back up here and loosen A. Again, be very mindful of these plastic extrusions here. They house some objects that you do not want to break off of this. So the bottoms have been broken free. Just as I'm referring to this, I'm referring to this as the bottom, this is the top, as that's the orientation of which it's seated in the car. So now that the bottoms are free, I'm just backing out the tops, getting past that area. All right, so note as I'm pulling these out, as I mentioned before, there's 2 different screw lengths here. So at the bottom, you have 2 longer bolts, and at the top, 2 shorter bolts. So just be mindful of that. Once you've removed these bolts, there is nothing holding the TCM on now, except for some interferences here. As I mentioned before, this ribbon cable, so to speak, is it has some plastic molded into the sides of the little conduit here that are kind of grabbing around this gasket plate here. So you'll have to essentially grab this ribbon cable and pull it out in order to lever it out, and then it'll just release. Let's go ahead and remove this. Just release over here, and we gently rock back and forth, and it'll lift up. I'm gonna look at my new TCM here. It's a refurbished unit. It's also cracked. Has our DSG software on it, our tune on it, and yeah, so that's what we're installing now. So basically, we're at the point where removal is complete. We just need to transition over to reinstallation. So reverse order of removal. We're just going to pop this on here. Something I didn't point out before, you have two indexing pegs here, one at the bottom on the side and then one at the top in the center. Those will fall into place on this hole here and this slotted hole up here. Generally, since this one is there's no tolerance on this one, it's just going to pop right in. You'll want to line this one up first, and then this one you'll have a little more wiggle room on that. But yeah, just make sure you're being mindful of how straight you're going on here. May have to wiggle a little bit to get down on this peg. And connector, if seated properly, DSG electrical connector for the exterior harness should sit right up against that plate there, and then your ribbon cable, just ensure that the little two fingers here, which I should show a close-up of, you have these, excuse me, let's see, two fingers here. The slot in between these fingers will basically fork over this this gasket plate here. So that's what we're focusing on now. Okay, so new TCM is on. I just want to lift this up here, make sure that I'm not sitting on any of those solenoid contacts. So that's sitting on here. We're going to go ahead and replace our bolts again. Two different sizes, two shorts, two longs. The longs are going to go in the bottom two slots here. Pop those in. Top two up here. And notice a little wiggling with that bracket. That will get, again, tension down once we tighten those bolts down. There is a tightening sequence for this. It's a two-stage sequence. So first of all, I kind of like to make it a three-stage sequence. I first go in, one, make sure that they're kind of hand tight, or finger tight I should say. We're gonna tighten these short bolts up first. And since these have a little bit of tension on them due to this metal bracket, give it a little bit more, maybe a little more than I should, just be careful here. And then at the bottom, since these just bottom out, I just go until I get a little resistance right there. And right there. All right, so now we're gonna move to our first stage of torquing. First off, we torque the short bolts to 6 Newton meters and our long bolts to 4.5 Newton meters. So got my little 1/4 inch drive torque wrench here. I'm gonna grab my T30, pop that on. Okay, and we're gonna set to 6 Newton meters. So 6 Newton meters, I'm gonna work in a star pattern, so I am gonna have to set this torque setting a few times in order to do this properly. So A and D will get torqued to 6 Newton meters. B and C, the long ones, will get torqued to 4.5 Newton meters. I have it set to 6, so I'm gonna start with A, which is up here. So that's 6 Newton meters on A. B is going to be the long bolt across from A. Again, the long bolts are getting torqued to 4.5 Newton meters. Move over to C, same specification, 4.5 Newton meters. Okay, then we're going to go up to D and do 6 Newton meters. A It'll click at 6 Newton meters, double check, good. All right, so that's stage 1. We're gonna move to stage 2, which stage 2 looks like we're doing 8 Newton meter torque on A and D, so the short guys, and then a 5 Newton meter torque on the bottom 2, plus a 30-degree turn on the shorts and a 25-degree turn on the longs. I do not have the proper tooling to measure angles, so I'm going to approximate. It's pretty good in geometry, so we should be okay. Start with A at 8 Newton meters. Okay. And then we're gonna hop down to B and C at 5 Newton meters. Then we're going back up to 8 Newton meters. So that takes care of our torque. Now we need to add the angle. For the shorts, we're going to 30 degrees, 25 degrees for B and C, and 30 degrees for D. Got our torques and our over torque angles set on our TCM bolts. I'm just cleaning it up a little bit here, and I'm getting ready to flip this over. We need to put the contact plate back on. Contact plate's gonna go on in a weird sequence here. We're not going numerically. It is starting 1, 2, 3, and then we're skipping to 12, and then doing some jumping around. So I'm just gonna inspect my contacts here. I wanna make sure that they're still straight, nothing's bent. I have a bunch of solenoids here that need to make very solid contact with the backing plate here. All right, so backing plate. I set it down with the bottom side down, so this is gonna be my orientation. Good. So 2 Newton meters on all screws now. Then we're gonna move to our stage 2 tightening sequence, 3 Newton meters plus 30 degrees. I'm gonna split that up. I'm gonna do 3 Newton meters all around, and then I'll go back and do 30 degrees. Same tightening sequence as we did before. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 12. And then I forget the numbers, however, I remember visually. We go here, 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 and here. Finally, we have here, 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 and here. So that takes care of our torques. Our torques on our torques. Next is going to be 30 degrees on all screws in that same order that we just followed. All right, so that is that. We now have our mechatronics unit with our cracked TCM installed, with our backing plate reinstalled. Everything's torqued down to proper specifications. We ensured that none of our fingers are bent. Everything should be making great contact electrically. So we have our TCM here. We had to deal with 4 bolts. We had the little plastic fingers on the ribbon cable conduit that we had to flip out of the way in order to lift the unit straight up. We weren't able to shift from side to side due to these indexing pins here that go through the TCM. This one in particular has no play in it. It sits quite flush along the side of the pin here. This one, however, does shift back and forth a little bit. Pretty simple once these 4 bolts are removed. Slide that guy out of the way and then just lift straight up. And yeah, that is how you replace TCM on a mechatronics unit for a DQ381 transmission.